Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have everyone here tonight. Feel free in the chat box, let us know where you are tuning in from. And I'll do a quick introduction of myself. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Nicole Babby. I am the Membership and Programs Director for the Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation. I've been with the organization for about 8 years, almost 9, edging towards 9 years. The foundation was established in 1977 to promote the preservation and enhancement of the architectural, cultural, and landscaped heritage of Saratoga Springs. Please forgive me as I'm trying to let people in at the same time. Usually I let Samantha, our executive director, handle all the introductions, but she is very happily on vacation today. So I am holding down the fort, and I just want to make sure that we are getting everybody in here for the program. So give me 1 second. I just want to get us back on track. All right. I think we've let everybody in that needed to be let in, so now we'll get back to it. So as I was saying, the Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation was founded in 1977 to promote the preservation and enhancement of the architectural, cultural, and landscaped heritage of Saratoga Springs. We do this through educational programs like tonight's program and strolls, as well as providing owners of historic buildings with technical assistance, advocating for best preservation practices within the city, commenting on exterior changes and new construction within the city, as well as undertaking restoration projects like the Spirit of Life, Spencer Trask Memorial, First Baptist Church, and our current rehabilitation project at 65 Philo Street. And as many of you know, preservation doesn't just happen, it takes a big effort. I would like to remind you all that we are a membership-based organization. So if you're not already a member, please join us. We had many of you actually join as members when you donated and registered. So thank you all so much for who are recent members and longtime members. But if you're not a current member, you can show your support for preserving Saratoga Springs year-round by becoming a member, and you'll receive advance notice of our events and discounts on programs. And once I'm done with my spiel, I will drop a link into the chat box so that you can click that and come join us. And I'm sure that many of you have also seen our communications about the rehabilitation of 65 Philo Street. But for anybody on this call who may not be aware, the foundation purchased 65 Philo Street in May of 2021. And we are nearing the end of our rehabilitation of this building that we had been advocating for over 20 years. As you can see from these pictures, the building has come a long way since 2021. The scope of work for this project included environmental remediation, completing necessary structural repairs, and installing a new roof. In addition, we repaired and painted the clapboard, as well as restored the historic windows and front porch. The rest of the porch restoration, remaining painting, and the installation of the restored front door will be finished in the upcoming months, weather permitting, completing the planned scope of work for the building. And the foundation will sell it to someone who will complete the interior and be a good steward for years to come. And any proceeds from the sale will enable us to take on other special projects that benefit our community. Lastly, I just wanted, you all are the first to see our 2024 Historic Homes Tour logo. So this is our largest fundraiser of the year, and it's coming up on Saturday, May 11th. So please mark your calendars. We will be offering it in person and virtually again this year. And this tour will take place in the North Broadway neighborhood of Saratoga Springs, and it's already shaping up to be quite the tour. So please keep an eye on our website for full details in the coming months. All right, so I have plugged enough of our events and ways that you can help support and donate. So I will get onto our wonderful program tonight. As I mentioned, as people were starting to come in, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. I will be moderating that, and we will ask Lauren at the end of the program. In the meantime, if you can please keep yourselves muted, I really appreciate that. And now I will introduce Lauren. So Lauren Roberts is a graduate of Skidmore College with a dual bachelor's degree in anthropology and American studies. She received her master's degree in public history from the University at Albany. She currently serves as the Saratoga County historian, a position which she has held since 2009. Lauren holds the position of second vice president for the Association of Public Historians of New York State. In 2017, she was co-producer of the highly successful documentary, Harnessing Nature, Building the Great Sacandaga, which chronicles the planning and development of the Great Sacandaga Lake, New York's largest reservoir. In 2019, Lauren signed on as co-host for WAMC Northeast Public Radio's podcast, A New York Minute in History, which has received 2 Edgar R. Murrow Regional Awards for Best Podcast in 2021 and 2023, as well as 2 New York State Broadcasters Association Awards for Outstanding Podcast in 2021 and 2022. She currently serves as the chair of Saratoga County 250th anniversary of the American Revolution Commission and has been appointed to serve on the New York State 250th Commission. And with all of that said, take it away, Lauren.
All right, thanks everyone. Thank you, Nicole, for the opportunity to speak. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So as Nicole mentioned, I have been appointed the chair of the Saratoga 250th Commission. And it's been all 250th since about 2021. So I'm just going to walk you through some really exciting upcoming events, some of the things that we've started out with. And just to begin, I think what I'll do, give a little refresher of why Saratoga is the turning point of the American Revolution. For those of you that have a hard time remembering from 4th grade American history when we first learned about the Revolution, this is just a quick overview of the Northern Campaign of 1777. And of course, there are other important historic sites and events that happened here during the Revolution. But by far the most significant is, of course, the Battles of Saratoga. And I do say Battles of Saratoga because there was more than one. I think one of the common misconceptions is that it's a singular event, but really it's a month-long saga, as we can see here. So I would also like to point out the caveat that I am not a military historian. And so if you're looking for very detailed information about military uniforms or troop movements, things like that, I highly recommend all of the folks over at Saratoga National Historical Park. They are very well versed and excellent rangers over there, happy to speak with the public. So definitely go to them. And if you're more interested, if you want to learn more, they actually have an excellent timeline on their website. And Nicole can put that in the chat for you if you are looking for further information on the military campaign itself. But just as a quick overview here of the Northern Campaign, just to remind everyone, it happens in the summer of 1777. We've already been at war with Britain for 2 years. The Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. We're a year past that by now. And this campaign is General John Burgoyne's plan to invade from Canada with his Northern Army and to basically separate the colonies, and his objective is Albany. So as you can see from the map, he leaves in June 17th. He leaves from Canada with about 9,000 men. And the first kind of major attack is Fort Ticonderoga. And it's actually not a battle because the Americans realize they're far outnumbered. They're being surrounded. They evacuate in the middle of the night, and Burgoyne takes Fort Ticonderoga. And he continues south in a victorious manner for about a month. And then coming in from the Mohawk Valley area, well, from the west, is a diversionary force led by Lieutenant Colonel Barry St. Leger. And he's coming across, his plan is to go through the Mohawk Valley and meet up with Burgoyne at Albany. So his plans don't work out. There is the Battle of Oriskany, which many of you have probably heard of, where Herkimer is ambushed, and St. Leger's force he actually has a siege for a small garrison at Fort Schuyler, which we know as Fort Stanwix, but at the time was Fort Schuyler. Although when he learns that what he thinks is a very large force led by Benedict Arnold, he leaves. And so Burgoyne is kind of left on his own after that. And Burgoyne is victorious moving south, pretty much along the Hudson River. He's on the opposite side, he's on the eastern side, but in September, he crosses over to our side of the river, to the western side, in what is now Saratoga County. It was not then. And at this point, General Gates, who has taken over from General Schuyler, so General Philip Schuyler was the commander of the Northern Army. He's relieved of his duties in August. He's blamed for the loss of Fort Ticonderoga. He's not well liked politically, so he is replaced by General Horatio Gates on August 19th. So Gates decides in September to move his army to defend and entrench at Bemis Heights, which is the heights above the Hudson River. Burgoyne moves his army across with a bridge of boats, and the first Battle of Saratoga takes place on September 19th. I neglected to mention the Battle of Bennington, which happens before in August. This is the first time that Burgoyne really starts to have some pains here. He's got a lot of supply chain issues. He goes forward ahead of his supply chain. It's not catching up, so he sends part of his army over towards Bennington. They actually don't go to Bennington. The battle happens in Walloomsic, and they're beaten. And he loses about almost 1,000 men for the Battle of Bennington. So that's where his troubles really kind of start. But he does push on, decides he's going to keep going down towards Albany. And then September 19th is when the first Battle of Saratoga happens. And that's the Battle of Freeman's Farm. It's a very long battle. The British hold the field at the end of the day. It goes back and forth. But at the end of the day, the British hold the field. So technically it's a victory for them. However, the Americans have stopped the British advance to Albany. So the Americans also think, it's a victory on their side because they've stopped the progress of the army. And then for about 2.5 weeks, everyone stays in place. And then on October 7th, you have the second battle occur, which is the Battle of Bemis Heights. This is the battle where the Americans are victorious. Benedict Arnold plays a large role in leading his men. They force the British into a retreat. The British retreat back to the area we now know as Schuylerville. And there is a siege period where the Americans are surrounding the area where Burgoyne's camp is, which is called Victory Woods now. It's also a Saratoga National Historical Park site. But really the area where the village of Schuylerville is, that's where they're entrenched. The Americans surround them. They cut off the ability for them to retreat north, and Burgoyne is left to surrender. So on October 17th, General Burgoyne surrenders to General Gates at Saratoga. It's actually a beautiful site, the surrender site, which is the newest acquisition of the Park Service. And he surrenders with about 6,000 men. They all become prisoners of war. They're known as the Convention Army, and they remain prisoners of war for several years. For for the remainder of the war. They're marched back over to Massachusetts, and then I think they go to Virginia. They spend time in Pennsylvania. So it's a really interesting story. But the reason that America is the turning point of the revolution is because this victory helps to convince the French to become our ally. And once they recognize us as an independent country, they become our ally. They send supplies, money, troops, and that's what eventually allows us to win the war. So that's my quick summary. But what I'm really going to talk about tonight is the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, which is knocking on our doors. And why is it important? Why is the 250th such a great time to be able to tell this story? I'm sure if I asked for the audience to raise their hands of who remembers the bicentennial, I bet there's quite a few of you out there that remember. And if you think back for a minute, what is it that you remember about the bicentennial? Just think back. I usually ask this question when I'm talking about the 250th anniversary, because I think there were a lot of good things that were done during the bicentennial. And I think it shows that we have a stage here, a national or international stage to tell our story. And the story isn't just a military story. It's a political story. It's a cultural story. It's the story of the women and children that were marching with the army. It's the story of the loyalists that were in Saratoga County. It's the story of all of the German soldiers that were part of the Brunswickers, that were part of Burgoyne's army, the native voices that maybe we haven't heard yet. There's so many stories on an individual basis that can be told here. And that's one of the things that we're really looking to do. So knowing that we have all of these amazing sites here, the Saratoga County Board of Supervisors thought it was important that we have a commission to be able to tell these stories and to get ready for the 250th anniversary, which actually starts with the Battle of Lexington and Concord in 2025. However, there's a lot of important events that led up to the revolution. So we've already begun programming. In July of 2021, the Board of Supervisors passed a resolution creating a 13-member commission that is tasked with planning and organizing all of the ceremonies, events, activities, and celebrations recognizing the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. So this resolution, which was passed, also says who will serve on this commission. So you can see on the screen the chairman of the board, the town of Saratoga and Stillwater supervisors. That's where the two battles and the siege took place. Our county administrator, the county historian, our director of veteran services, the superintendent of the Saratoga National Historical Park, because we recognize that the National Park Service are major partners for us here. They have so many wonderful sites in our backyard. We also have a representative from either the Daughters of the American Revolution or the Sons of the American Revolution. We have an educator on our commission. Right now, our educator is a history teacher at Shenendehowa, which is our largest school district in Saratoga County. We have a representative from the Saratoga County History Center, which is our countywide historical society. And then we also have a representative from the living historian community, all of our reenactors who really make it their business on a weekend basis to go out and help people understand history in an immersive way. And then we also have 2 citizens at large that serve, and these commissioners serve 3-year terms on our commission. So we have a lot of people from a lot of different heritage organizations on this commission. And I will tell you, these people are really great idea people. But sometimes what happens is we get caught up with all the amazing ideas that we have, and we have to bring ourselves back and remember what our focus is. So what we did was we outlined what our mission was. What are the things that are most important as a legacy for the 250th in Saratoga County? So we came down to 3 guiding stars that we use for our mission. The first is education. Promote public education regarding the important role our area played as the turning point. The second is engage. This is to increase heritage tourism by promoting Saratoga County as an historic destination. And the third is preserving, which is something that Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation does very well. In this case, we're talking about our Revolutionary War sites, but improving the infrastructure around them. We want to make sure that the investments that we're making during this commemorative period, number one, live long past that, because we're hoping that once we increase our heritage tourism, that's something that will continue. And also that the next generation learns to understand and appreciate historic preservation. We are benefiting from the generations that came before us, that preserved the battlefield, that preserved the Schuyler House, that built the monument. And, we need to make sure that we're teaching the next generation about historic preservation so that these sites are still available for us to visit when it's the 300th anniversary. So those are our guiding stars, and we started with our mission. How are we going to be able to do this? One of the things we did was we purchased an 18th century marquee style tent so that we have kind of a portable, we call it our turning point tent, that we can bring around to different events that already exist. And we can use it as a jumping off point for people to learn about Revolutionary history. So this is actually at the Saratoga County Fair. We had a place, we had 18th century clothing, reproduction clothing that children could come in and try on. We brought in reenactors to talk. This is actually an artillery group that came in and they were talking to the kids. We had word searches and crafts. We had some artifacts that they had to guess what it was. So, we're trying to right now build and get the word out about the revolution, about the upcoming commemorative period. So this past summer, one of the things we did was we had a lecture series called Revolution on the Hudson. We have some beautiful parks along the Hudson River here in the county. They're public places where people can go and enjoy the beauty of our green spaces here, but also they're either adjacent to or on historic places as well. So we picked 3 different public parks, town parks along the Hudson River, and we brought in 3 different lecturers that talked about some aspect of the Saratoga campaign, the Northern Campaign of 1777. At each one, we had a different living historian there. We had 18th century toys and games for kids. In hindsight, this summer was not the best summer to have a series of outdoor events because it rained pretty much every time we had an outdoor event. But we made it through, and we had to move some locations. We had to move some dates. But we had about 100 people at each event. We did one in Half Moon. We did one at Browns Beach in Stillwater, which had to be moved because our location on the Hudson was flooded for 2 weeks because of all the rain we had. And then we also did one at Hudson Crossing Park up in Schuylerville. So we tried to offer things for all ages. We included some civic groups. We had Boy Scouts come in. We had DAR and SAR there. The towns were very helpful in providing these spaces, and people got to learn a little bit about the Revolution on sites that were significant. So going along with our mission for education, one of the things that we're really trying to do is improve the tools that teachers have to be able to bring the Revolution to life for their students. So in the fall of 2022, we partnered with the Battlefield and the Living History Education Foundation, which is in the Hudson Valley. And we offered a day-long workshop for any 4th, 7th, or 11th grade teacher in Saratoga County, which is the years that they focus on the Revolution, to come out to the battlefield for the day. We outfitted them in linen hunting shirts, haversacks, tricorns. They had replica muskets, and taught them how to drill. We taught them how to set up these tents that you see here. We brought in living historians to talk about 18th century medicine. We talked about women's roles in following the army. The Ranger Bill Velosin gave a tour of the battlefield, a walking tour. And once these teachers had gone through this program, they got CTLE credit for coming. And then they also have the ability to go out. There are storage depots where all of this gear lives. And once they go through this program, they then can sign out all of this gear and bring it back to their individual schools and bring it to their students so that they can go out and try to erect one of these tents and go through the drills and put on the hunting shirts and the tricorns. And it's a way, a lot of times the things that stick with kids are not just the classroom activities. And we know that it's very difficult in our post-COVID world to get kids out on field trips, to find enough bus drivers to be able to take them to different places. So this is a way that we could equip our teachers with these tools that they could then bring back to school and hopefully make an impact on their students. We had a Turning Point Tea Party program, which we held at Brookside Museum, which is the Saratoga County History Center, because this past year, 2023, was the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party. So we invited kids on April break to come to a workshop at Brookside. They learned about 18th century clothing. They tried writing with a quill. They tried Liberty tea. So we learned about the Tea Party. We learned about how people boycotted British tea. And then we learned about what kind of plants would be growing in the area that would become Saratoga County, but this area in the 1770s, and what would they have to make tea out of, and how did it taste? And these kids, there were some kids here that said they had never tasted tea before. They didn't like it. Most of them didn't like it. We used mint leaves for their tea. But they really had a great time. They played games, and it was a great success. So just to get them exposed to some of the activities that would have been common in the 1770s. One of our signature events in the spring is our Women in War Symposium. So this was started by the Friends of the Marshall House, Inc. And it was inspired by the story of the Baroness, who is Lady Frederica Rasil. She was the wife of the commander of the German troops at Saratoga. She traveled here with her 3 very young daughters and followed her husband along the campaign. And then during the siege period, she was taking refuge in the basement, the cellar of the Marshall House, which is a house that still stands in Schuylerville. And she kept a diary, was writing back to her mother in Germany and writing down her experiences. So we know in her own words what she was experiencing and feeling during this time. So that was the idea that was inspired. The Marshall House, the Friends of the Marshall House created this in 2022. They held their first Women in War Symposium, and then we partnered with them to enhance it this year. We brought scholars in, and then we also added a trolley tour, which followed the footsteps of Lady Rasil as she followed her husband. And then when she became a prisoner of war, we ended. Pat Niles was our tour guide. It was an excellent tour. All of our scholars did a great job speaking about different aspects, different roles that women played in the Revolution. And so this coming May, the first week in May, will be the 3rd annual Women in War Symposium, and we're really looking forward to that. Our other signature yearly event is the New York State Path Through History Weekend, which There are 2 of these in New York State, but the fall one, which is in Columbus Day weekend, happens to coincide well with the dates of the battles and the siege of Saratoga. So Columbus Day weekend, we do a civilian interpretation at the Schuyler House, and then a military interpretation on the battlefield. We partner with the Park Service to offer this immersive living history weekend. This past weekend, it was quite rainy both days, but we still had, I think, about maybe 1,200 visitors across the 2 days. And it was wonderful. It really brought out people. They had a lot of questions. We brought in a forge from Ohio. You could actually watch them working on the forge. People talking about how to feed an army, foodways from the 18th century, 18th century midwifery, and healing roles that women play. So it was a really great weekend. This is something that we will continue, not just in the commemorative period, but every year. And Columbus Day weekend of 2027, which is the actual 250th anniversary of the Battles of Saratoga, that will be our big signature event where we plan to hold a large scale reenactment. So mark your calendars now. One of the other fun things we do with school groups, and this is in partnership with the town of Saratoga and the village of Schuylerville. They've been doing this for a long time. At Fort Hardy Park, which is also the field of grounded arms. So where all of the soldiers in the British Army laid down their arms as they were surrendering. This is right here on the banks of the Hudson. As you see, the kids participate in the ceremony. These are kids from Schuylerville. They play on drums, these buckets, as their friends have plank muskets that they come and lay down their arms. They see a reenactment of the actual surrender. We have speakers come in. The kids, they wrote, one of the students wrote an amazing poem about the significance of Saratoga, but it's really an excellent morning ceremony. We have one of the cannons. We do with the 13 toasts. But I think there are about 200 kids here this year, and it's great. It's really a wonderful event. The Saratoga County Board of Supervisors has made Surrender Day, which is October 17th, an annual county holiday. So we're hoping to expand the different options that we offer there. 2 of the big projects that we're working on coming up. The first one is augmented reality. So one of the things that we're trying to do is expand the reach, broaden our audience to see how many people we can get, how many more people we can reach. So not just people who are already interested in history, but people who might not, or maybe they go to the battlefield for recreation activity. So we decided we need to meet people where they are. And where are they? They're on their phones. So this is some new tech that we have partnered with our friends group, which is Campaign for Saratoga 250. And they have contracted with a company called 360XR, who has several installations at historic sites on Long Island using augmented reality to be able to tell the story of many different historic figures. And this helps for several reasons. Sometimes you can't get on an actual site that you need to tell the story, but you can actually hold the phone and the person can stand up wherever you are to tell you the story, but also with staffing. I don't know how many people have been to the battlefield. It's a very long road. And sometimes I'm a visual learner. If you can hold up your phone and look at the screen and see through the screen where the troops were moving, what their positions were, it's much easier to understand what was going on for the battle. So I'm going to attempt to try to show you a little bit of a demo. I'm hopeful that it will work. I'm going to see if I can slide this over. So give me just a second. This is just a couple minutes long. And just give you a sneak peek of our demo.
In 1777, the battles of Saratoga put us on the map. They were truly America's turning point. Saratoga saved America's war for independence. Prior generations preserved the hallowed grounds of the battlefields themselves. Others built the Saratoga Monument to celebrate its 100th anniversary. Now, for the momentous 250th anniversary, it's our turn. America's turning point is Saratoga's campaign to educate, engage, and preserve the battle's significance for new generations. Our brand is redefining the way history is told. We're bringing history to life using 3D animation and augmented reality. And in doing so, we're making history new and relevant to a whole new demographic. But don't just take our word for it. Try it out for yourself. We have created a sample app that can be downloaded from the Apple and Android stores. The app uses your phone's camera to find the ground and then uses augmented reality to place historical figures in front of you, bring them to life, and allow them to tell their stories.
I have sacrificed time and again for the cause of liberty. And still, Congress passes me over for promotion, denying me the recognition I rightfully deserve. Even so, at the request of General Washington, I will dispatch with haste yet again to our Northern Army. The chance to repel British advances at Saratoga will again prove my valor and leadership. Surely halting their forces before they reach Albany will give me an undeniable path to promotion.
Here I stand, thousands of miles from home, with my 3 young daughters, on a campaign stretching from Canada along the Hudson River. We live amidst a paradox. Nature's beauty surrounds us, yet the harsh realities of wilderness travel and the brutal truths of war shape our days. I fear for my husband's safety and pray for British triumph at Saratoga. My hope is for this odyssey to soon come to an end, so that we can return once again to our German homeland.
Superior British strategy and execution will allow us to achieve a resounding victory along the Hudson River. With Saratoga behind us, Albany will be in sight, and with its capture, the 13 colonies will be divided, and we shall be poised to end this rebellion once and for all. With these upstart American rebels defeated, peace will be restored throughout the colonies in the name of king and country.
I have a score to settle with these British. During the French and Indian War, I received 499 lashes at their hands. More recently, I was a guest in their prison due to my role in our invasion of Quebec. With my release, I was selected to lead the Rifle Corps, the best 400 riflemen and sharpshooters in the colonies. Our distance and accuracy are unmatched. I'm told we're the unit General Burgoyne fears the most, as well he should, because at Saratoga, I intend to bring a whole new kind of war to these arrogant British and drive them from our shores for good.
Now that you've met our initial cast of characters, you know how the story begins. But it's just that, a beginning. Over the next few years, these characters will tell the rest of their stories. In fact, we'll bring even more characters to life and share many more perspectives. So spread the word. Something revolutionary is happening at Saratoga yet again. Make plans to visit and hear the rest of our stories. As you can see, we're taking a whole new approach to historical storytelling. In doing so, we're making the Battles of Saratoga relevant to a whole new demographic, not just history buffs. The captivating beauty of our landscape is well known, as is the profound impact of standing on ground where history happened. We complement that with augmented reality to bring history to life and make you part of it. The result is a uniquely engaging personal experience. So whether you've visited us before or never had that pleasure, you simply have to come and experience what we have to offer. We have a lot planned between now, the 250th anniversary, and beyond. Visit our website to see what's happening next in our journey, because the Battles of Saratoga are truly America's turning point.
All right, so that's our preview, and you can see here I'm standing with New York State historian Devin Lander at a history fair at the New York State Museum, and that's Benedict Arnold standing, in case you don't recognize him, in between us. So if you're thinking to yourself, they kind of look like video game characters, that's exactly what we want them to look like, because that's the demographic that we're going after. Those are younger generations are used to these types of characters. There are video games that include historical references. So that's, if you think that's what it looks like, that's a good thing. That's what we're going for. And like I said, 360XR, which has developed these characters, they have 13 different installations at historic sites across Long Island. And they the increase in visitorship is amazing when they offer these different types of technology. Right, let's see if I can get back here. Sorry. So another big project that we're working on is we brought in Darley Newman, who is a television host for Travels with Darley on PBS. I think she's had 10 seasons of shows. She's goes all over the world and gives travel tips, where to go, where to stay. And so this year she started a new series called Revolutionary Road Trips. So she's focusing on sites across the country that have amazing revolutionary stories to tell in the upcoming, in regards to the upcoming 250th anniversary. So Darley came, she was here for about 5 days in the end of September, and we filmed at a lot of historic sites. We have a lot of layers of history in Saratoga County. So we did visit all of the revolutionary sites, but she also was in the city a lot, at a lot of different places for food and entertainment and the mineral springs. So her episode will be coming out this spring. We don't have an official date yet, but probably late March or early April. So I'm just going to show you, this is a 60-second sneak peek, and you might see some familiar faces and places. Hang on one second, bear with me. Flip this back over.
We're taking a revolutionary road trip in and around Saratoga, New York, the site of the landmark battle of the American Revolution.
If you look through that gap in the trees, that's where the first Battle of Saratoga took place.
This is the actual site where Burgoyne surrendered his sword, and this would be a major turning point in the American Revolution.
That's right. We'll learn about Saratoga Springs as one of our nation's first resort cities.
Our city slogan is Health, History, Horses.
And a place where entrepreneurs and small businesses have revolutionary roots.
So the dairy farm has its roots in the American Revolution.
Yes.
And an appreciation for the past.
You've got the little museum.
Cheers.
And the famous stage where Bob Dylan performed, among others. Yeah.
I would put it up against any fried chicken.
Don't take my bagel away.
People want to watch the world go by.
From Saratoga's porch.
From Saratoga's porch.
So stay tuned for Darley, that episode. It'll be coming out in the spring. I'm sure there'll be announcements to come when we have that date. Another cool thing we did this year to connect kids in Saratoga to the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party was that we helped Boston, our friends in Boston, collect tea for the Tea Party. They were collecting tea for their large-scale reenactment that they were actually throwing into the harbor. So I had a wonderful volunteer, Sue, who made these cool tea collection boxes with the East India Company logo on them. And we reached out to the teachers that were part of that teacher workshop that I showed you earlier. And some of them took us up on our offer. We brought in these boxes and these kids collected tea. And then we took the tea and shipped it to Boston. And then they could watch, it was live streamed. And they could watch the tea being dumped into the harbor that they collected in their schools. We were out at historic Faneuil Hall. We had a bunch of volunteers. We demoed our augmented reality. We actually stood up the characters and talked about Saratoga and about what we're doing for the 250th. The city of Boston did a great job with it's kind of the first large scale 250th reenactment to happen. And it was a lot of fun. It was great. And then this says a secondary piece of our Travels with Darley episode. Darley invited me to come down and be a part of a panel that spoke last week in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian at the Ripley Center. And I represented Saratoga and the state of New York. There was also representatives from New Jersey, South Carolina, and Virginia. Those are the first 4 episodes in her Revolutionary Road Trip series. She talked about the hidden gems, the places she liked the best to visit at each of these spots, and then, allowed us the chance to talk about our historic sites and, what we thought were our favorite hidden gems here. So, that kind of wraps up our year here. I do want to point you to our website, Saratoga250.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. I have my county historian page, but also Battles of Saratoga 250. If you head to our website, you can sign up if you're interested in volunteering for all of these big upcoming events. We have lots of different opportunities, whether you sew or you like crafts or you like to move tables back and forth and set up chairs, which all the organizations know it's just as important to have those people that pick things up and put them down as it is to have the presenters themselves. A lot of support staff necessary to keep these, heritage organizations going. So we're really excited moving into the commemorative period and beyond. And I did want to mention I've been appointed to the New York State Commission as well. New York State Commission is still waiting on 2 more appointments from Governor Hochul. Hopefully that will happen soon. And when it does, the state will also be a part of the 250th. I did serve on a panel that the New York State historian put together that has issued a field guide for the commemorative period. That's available on the state site, and it offers broad themes for places across New York State to be able to join in the commemorative period, even if you aren't lucky enough to have a significant historic site in your backyard, but broad themes talking about civics and we the people and Indigenous history, because Indigenous history is New York history. So stay tuned for information from New York State. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you all for your interest.
Thank you, Lauren. That was incredible. I loved getting to hear about all of that, especially how you're trying to really focus it for children and school groups, because I think it's really important for them to understand history and understand the importance of our history. As a preservation organization, one of my favorite things that I get to do is tours with 2nd and 3rd graders in downtown Saratoga Springs. So I love seeing their excitement and how I had a teacher one time tell me that it kind of changes their entire worldview by the time they get to the end of our tours. And I feel like this is a similar thing where they'll be so much more appreciative of the region that we grew up in, but really understand the history behind it. So it's all so exciting. We don't have any questions yet. We do have some thank yous and that people really appreciate your presentation. I think it got us all excited for what's to come because it's only 2024. So we have 3 years of getting to celebrate and learn and find different ways to participate in our own backyard and even visit the other areas around us too, because it's nice that everything's kind of in a drivable distance that we can go and celebrate for these. I do have one question on here. It says, can I get on a mailing list to volunteer? And I will put the Saratoga 250 website back in the chat. And you can go right there, right, Lauren?
That's right. And you can add your email to be on the newsletter, the mailing list. And also there's a volunteer form. It's like a Google form that you can fill out with your interests. And we will contact you when our events come up. Usually, I think our first event would be a large scale event is our Women in War in May. But yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have people volunteer and be a part of this.
Absolutely. And you can go to the Women in War on, what was it, May 4th?
Yes.
And then you can come to the Historic Home Store on May 11th. You can have
Yes.
two history weekends right in a row. So that'll be nice.
Right.
And Bob just commented that it's a great presentation. He's from the Boston area and has a home in Saratoga, and they're lucky to have great history in both backyards. That is really nice.
Yeah.
Linda asked, can we hear more about the Marshall House and what happened to the Baroness?
Yes, the Baroness, she survived. She was a prisoner of war and followed the Convention Army around with her 3 daughters. She ended up having 2 more daughters while she was still here, named America and Canada. And they were eventually exchanged and went back to Canada. She's actually credited with, I think she's either the first or one of the first to bring North America the tradition of the Christmas tree, which she brings when she's back in Canada after she is a prisoner of war here. But if you're interested in her, she did write her memoirs are published, and it is I'm trying to remember what the actual title is. I have it behind me. But if you look up the Baroness, Frederica Rasil, you'll come across, it was actually translated by a local person. I'm not sure exactly what the date, but in the 1800s. She's fascinating. She's a fascinating character. She talks about when she was in the Marshall House. You can actually kind of like feel her emotion when she says, one of the quotes is, "I was more dead than alive." She's holding her children. Their heads are in her lap. She can't sleep. They're on the in the cellar. There's wounded soldiers around her because the other officers, wounded officers, are there, and she's trying to help them. She talks about the awful smell because they couldn't leave the cellar because they were within range. The house is being cannonaded. She talks about hearing the cannonballs come through the windows and the walls and hearing them roll around above her head. And it's a great story. You can think of her kind of like a female war correspondent. It's one of those, the great examples of when we hear a female perspective in the midst of, combat. So I would encourage you to read her book. We actually, in our Women in War Symposium, one of our speakers is Frederica Rasil. She is a professor down in Pennsylvania. She recently wrote a book called The Hessians, and now she's working on a book about the Baroness. And she's going to speak at our Women in War Symposium about her upcoming book. So if you're interested in the Baroness, definitely check out the Women in War Symposium.
All right, and then another question that we had is Is there a plan to include the role of local Indigenous tribes in the Revolutionary War? And it actually made me realize that at the start of our program, I usually like to recognize the land of which Saratoga Springs is on, which was the local nations of the Mohawk, the Mohican, and the Haudenosaunee. So I apologize that I didn't do that from the start. So thank you for that question. But Lauren, do you want to address that a little bit?
Yeah, so right now we are in the middle of an American Battlefield Protection Program grant, which is it's a master interpretation grant. So we've hired local consultants that are helping us to comb through the amazing amount of research that's been done. A lot of commission studies that were done under the National Park Service. There was one very recently that talks about Indigenous people before, during, and after the revolution at Saratoga. It was done by Dr. Kareem Tiro. So that is immensely helpful in understanding and exploring Indigenous history here related to the revolution. As part of the grant, we've reached out to all of the THPOs, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officers in New York, to get their input and comments about how to tell authentic Indigenous stories. We are in the midst of speaking with a consultant to try and we're going to talk about Colonel Louis Cook, who was an Indigenous person who was at Saratoga, actually now Schuylerville, old Saratoga, at the Schuyler Estate in the 1750s, when he was captured. The first time that the house was burned, he was captured by the French and natives and taken, and he was raised in a native community up near the border of Canada. He comes back to, he fights in the French and Indian War. He comes back and fights on the side of the Americans in the American Revolution. He fights at Saratoga, and he, I believe, is the highest ranking Native American in the Army. He becomes colonel. Washington knows him. He refers to him in a letter. And there is Darren Bonaparte, who is a Native researcher. He has written a lot about him. So we're in contact with him and hopefully talking about telling his story. There is a print at the Schuyler House, and Dr. Kareem Tiro talks about him in his book, in his study also. So yes, we're working on trying to include all different perspectives, and certainly underrepresented stories or stories people haven't heard about yet. So all different types of perspectives.
That's wonderful. Another question is, how many of the German troops stayed in America after surrender?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that some of them did. While they were the Convention Army, many of them escaped. I mean, the conditions were pretty bad for them, and they were actually just moving them around for several years. So there were Germans that stayed, but I can't put a number on that. I don't know.
That's okay. I always appreciate an I don't know answer. So, so that's okay. You've already blown my mind with the information that you could just pull out so quickly. So the last question that we have here is just, do you have a date for when the AI QR codes are going to be available for local education at the battlefield and other places?
I don't have a date. I would hope so. We're in the middle of this interpretation grant. That grant is going to inform the stories that we want to focus on. The grant ends in like the end of June, beginning of July. So I wouldn't expect them before then, but stay tuned for that. And if you get on our mailing list, Saratoga 250 certainly will make announcements when we're ready for that.
That's great. And then we had one more question come through. Are you reaching out to descendants of participants in the Battles of Saratoga?
Not yet, but we hope to. I think especially for the 2027 celebration, we would absolutely like to connect with descendants. There were several different troops from all over New England. There were New York troops there too. A lot of, it was a large number, but yeah, we are talking about different ways to include descendants in the commemorative period.
It's wonderful. I'll give it one more second just to see if anybody else has any questions or other comments. Otherwise, Lauren, you nailed it. It's 8:01 on the dot. So, well, I will say thank you to everyone for joining us tonight on here. We had a great turnout. I'm so glad that people were able to stay for the whole hour. And obviously, if you have any questions about this going forward, Lauren is always available. The website has a lot of information on it as well, and definitely go sign up for their newsletters so that you can stay up to date on everything. All right, thank you everyone. I appreciate you coming. And thank you, Lauren. We appreciate your time tonight.
Hi, thank you very much.
All right, bye everybody.